I'm Brian Scordato, and this is the Idea to Startup podcast brought to you by Tacklebox. We accelerate ideas into real companies through the Tacklebox membership, and we think through startup strategy every Wednesday on the Idea to Startup podcast. You're here because you're thinking about an idea, or you're ready to launch something, or you already launched something and you're running full steam ahead. We're here to help with the counterintuitive stuff. On to it. Today, I'm supposed to be on vacation. The goal was to send out an old pod, or to record one of the Whisper Ideas posts I write each Sunday. But instead, there was an idea that I couldn't stop thinking about. The second of Brian's 3 things from the episodes we started last week. Usually, when I'm this excited about a podcast idea, it's both helpful to listeners and pretty easy to write. So hopefully, we'll get this up and out fast so I can get into the ocean with the little guy. It's the first year he'll be able to splash in the water on his own and really hear the seagulls and see the pelicans dive and get the magic of it all. I think I'm most excited to teach him that game where you bury your feet in the sand and try to keep them in the same spot as the waves go by. I've always thought of myself as one of the top 5 or 10 in the world at that game, so there's really no one better to teach him. Anyway, before I go play the feet in the sand game, which really should have an official name because I'm pretty sure everyone on Earth has played it, I want to talk about risk. Really about our reaction to risk and how you'll have normal brain and you'll have entrepreneur brain, and you need to calibrate each. The way you react to risk with your startup needs to be significantly different from how you react to risk in any other part of your life. It is about as important a topic as we can cover. And to do it, I need to start by talking about a guy who couldn't get anyone to buy his house for $1 million, so he sold it for 2. I've probably had 10 people email me this story over the past week, both listeners I don't know and friends I do. Here it is. A guy named Dustin Law was apparently struggling to sell his house for $1 million over in England, but he didn't want to lower the price of his house because he felt that's what the house was worth. As a side note, I guess this actually happened in like 2017. I have no idea why it got popular now. Probably one of those LinkedIn posts from someone with the last name Pompliano or whatever. And I did Google it to see if it actually happened, and the Google AI said that it did. But it also said that blueberry has 3 B's, so take the whole thing with a grain of salt. Back to the story. A frustrated Dustin apparently tried everything to sell his home before having an idea. He'd create a lottery. He'd sell $1 lottery tickets, and the winner would get his house. He got a bunch of press and ended up selling $2 million worth of lotto tickets. So he ended up getting $2 million for his house, and the winner got his house for $1. This pod isn't about that strategy. You almost certainly shouldn't try to auction off your house, and I have no idea if it's even legal. The pod is about our friend Dustin's reaction to his house not selling. My old college basketball coach used to constantly stress to us that nothing mattered more than our reactions. Missing a shot, missing a defensive assignment, committing a dumb foul, a turnover, those are all things that happen when you play basketball. What actually matters is how you react to those things happening. Sure, we'd try to not commit turnovers, but our reaction to inevitable turnovers was what won or lost games. If you reacted to a turnover by immediately trying to make up for it, you'd probably compound it. One mistake is okay, compounded mistakes are what beat you. For entrepreneurs, this is even trickier. The rules are the same. What matters are your reactions to certain scenarios, but the right reactions in basketball are obvious. Stick to fundamentals. Whereas the right reactions in entrepreneurship are very much not. They're totally counterintuitive. And when you introduce the emotion of a thing not going the way you'd planned, everything gets stickier. Make a turnover in basketball? Great. Next time down, focus hard on running the play properly. Run a customer acquisition test and get 0 signups, and what do you do next? To make it all that much harder, you'll have way more chances to react poorly with your startup, because basically nothing is going to go as planned. Your whole day will be reacting to things that surprise you, usually in a negative way. The interesting part about Dustin's lottery ticket approach to me is that he reacted to a blocker like an entrepreneur, not like a normal person, which we'll get to. There's a guy named Ali Abdaal whose stuff I almost always love, who wrote something really interesting the other day that I can't stop thinking about. It was on what he called the student mindset versus the entrepreneur mindset. I'll pop it on the show notes. That, combined with a new video from our old friend Graham Weaver, which I'll also pop in the show notes and is an absolute stop everything and watch, spurred me to think about our founders' reactions to risk and blockers and led to today's pod. Your startup is only as good as your reactions to blockers. Most people are programmed to react wrong. So we've got to at least help you know what right looks like. Let's get to it so I can go back to teaching my son that game in the ocean, Sticky Feet. That's not a good name for it. Maybe Tide and Seek? Doesn't make any sense, but at least it's kind of a pun. Feet Home, Alabama? I think we're going in the wrong direction. Let's just get to how you should react to blockers as an entrepreneur. And we'll do it after a little smooth jazz. I opened up 2 sessions of the Let's Actually Run Customer Interviews workshop. It's a 10-day workshop with 3 live on Zoom group sessions plus 1 30-minute individual coaching session with me. These sell out fast. We just opened them up for August and September. After our 10 days together, you'll have a bunch of interviews scheduled, a CRM system in Notion that'll help you manage these interviews, a set of questions to ask during the interviews, and you'll have a way to synthesize everything you learned from the interviews into your next steps. This is a momentum workshop. After 10 days, your idea will feel real. The to-do list monster. The way we'll structure the rest of the pod is to talk about a blocker you're going to encounter, how your normal brain will push you to solve that blocker, and how you should flip on entrepreneur brain to solve it in a way that doesn't compound that blocker. This is a useful exercise, as nearly everyone else will navigate blockers with normal brain, and normal brain is not good at entrepreneurship stuff. There are 4 situations that we're going to go through. The pod consultants absolutely loved that there were going to be 4 situations. Lists sell, or so I'm told. As does apparently repeating that there will be a list and always noting where you are on said list. So, of the 4 items on the list, this is the first on that list of 4. 3 more coming your way. List. The first situation we'll cover is what to do when you've got an overwhelmingly long to-do list. Something that happens almost immediately when you're trying to build something out of nothing. A to-do list is a finicky mistress. They're sometimes useful, often overwhelming, and usually way better in theory than in practice, like having a relationship in college. To-do lists for entrepreneurs bloat. You'll have ideas throughout the day and you'll toss them on your to-do list until you end up with this massive, unwieldy, disjointed mishmash of things you might someday want to do. Then, when you sit down to work on your startup, you get overwhelmed by the sheer number of items on that to-do list. When our normal brain gets overwhelmed by tasks, its reaction is to bear down and start chipping away at that massive task list. Since it's already overwhelmed, it'll pick the safest task to work on first. Our normal brain likes balance. This type of approach isn't bad at all for your job at Deloitte, but it is a disaster for a startup. Luckily, the to-do list monster is here to help. When you feel overwhelmed by a long to-do list, this is the idea to queue. At its best, a to-do list is a clear set of steps that'll help you reach a super ambitious goal. But the obvious problem with a to-do list for any ambitious goal is that ambitious goals don't have an easy-to-follow to-do list. Only non-ambitious goals do. So your list of to-dos is probably moving you towards something more guaranteed and less ambitious, or less likely to separate you. Here is an example. Let's say you're trying to build a digital course that'll teach beginners how to develop a photography habit. Maybe your to-do list has things like reach out to an SEO person on Fiverr, make a website on Squarespace that'll let people pre-sign up for the course, film the first module and post it to social media, start a blog where you talk about photography for beginners, reach out to photography podcasts to see if you could come on as a guest, make an email welcome sequence for people who sign up on the site. This is a totally reasonable list for someone working on an idea. But what is the real burning question your to-do list is trying to help you answer? The best way to find out is to ask the to-do list monster question, which is, what could you do that, if it worked, would make this entire list irrelevant? That is why I call it the to-do list monster, because I think of it as this monster that's going to eat your entire list. When I look at the list, it seems like a bunch of tasks oriented towards seeing if this is actually an idea people are going to pay for. But I describe the approach as systematically unambitious. Fine in normal life, not fine in startup life. So what could we do that would make it clear beyond a shadow of a doubt that people want this thing? What is ambitious? What could put us on the hook? Off the top of my head, we could find a photography influencer who has the attention of a bunch of beginners and place an ad in their video or newsletter for a 1-week photography habit challenge. Or we could partner with a camera store to run a pilot program with anyone who just bought a new camera. Or we could focus on new parents learning the skill and go partner with local toddler classes. Once you pick the to do list monster, the thing that, if it works, makes all the other tasks look small and irrelevant, you start figuring out how to execute on it. And that becomes your new to do list. So, for the photography influencer idea, you're finding the top influencers, reaching out to them, figuring out a way to position your product, and on and on and on. Your to do list becomes a bunch of things that are helping with your unique, creative, differentiated approach. That is what an entrepreneur's to do list is for. It's a set of tasks that'll hopefully help you make this unlikely thing happen. And when it doesn't work, that unlikely thing, when we hit a fatal flaw with the photography influencer idea or we don't get the responses we'd hoped, we set up the next to do list monster attempt. Which brings us to situation number 2, when things don't work. Situation number 2, when things don't work. Your normal brain has a very clear playbook for when things don't work the way you'd planned. You stop doing that thing and you revert to safe ground. As I said before, normal brain likes balance and the well-worn path. So when you try a to-do list monster approach and it fails, you immediately go back to your safe to-do list. Whatever you're 99% sure is actually going to work. This is, again, really good advice in nearly every facet of your life. This is exactly what my coach was trying to get us to do after a turnover. The problem is, our normal brain doesn't understand what works and what doesn't in the startup world. If you think an approach is safe and likely to work, then everyone else working on a similar idea will think the approach is safe and likely to work, and they'll do it. They'll all listen to their normal brain, and so they'll all follow that path. And you'll end up elbow to elbow with a bunch of people doing the predictable thing, and you'll have to somehow be better at all those normal tasks than everyone else to win, and it's not going to happen. The normal path is the riskiest thing you can pursue as an entrepreneur. When you try something and it doesn't work, you need to try another thing that has a low likelihood of working, but a ton of upside if it does. This, again, probably sounds like bad advice, because what if that thing doesn't work too? Then what? Well, you try another to do list monster approach. You lean into what you know about your customer that other people don't, and you try and be creative and ambitious. The way to rationalize this approach to yourself is to skip to the other side of the journey. Go listen to episodes of that scoundrel Guy Raz or any other podcast that has guests on talking about their successful companies. Every one of them will have a story where a to-do list monstery type of approach catapulted them from the pool of everyone working on something the same way to a more sparsely populated path. Your to-do list is a physical representation of your goals and your ambition. If you look at the thing and it isn't inspiring and a little scary, you're doing the whole thing wrong. You have to be doing stuff that you aren't totally prepared for, which brings us very nicely to situation number 3. Situation number 3, when you feel unprepared. Ali talked about the prepared thing in his post and it really resonated. Your normal brain will want to wait until it feels fully prepared before it moves forward. But entrepreneur brain needs to move forward before it's ready. This is one of the more important and nuanced shifts. There's nothing more infuriating to me than when people blatantly lie about progress or customers or partners or previous funding under the all-protecting umbrella of fake it till you make it or move fast and break things or whatever slogan you'd like to choose from one of the companies that had to lie and cheat and steal to make the market position they have. Those companies, with Meta as the obvious example, have that mindset injected in their DNA, and so they end up building morally reprehensible products. But there's a huge delta between waiting until you're fully, unabashedly prepared to do something and actually thinking Instagram for teens is a thing that society needs. Sorry, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox today. I've hopped back down. When you feel unprepared for something, your normal brain will tell you to prepare for it. Again, not horrible advice, but preparing in the normal world and preparing in the startup world are very different things. And if you prepare in the startup world the way you do in the normal world, you're in trouble. Preparing in the normal world means reading up and researching. Preparing in the startup world means getting in the mix, ethnographic research, watching people solve the problem you'd like to help them solve better, speaking with them while they do it, trying to help them solve it. You can't prepare yourself for starting a business any other way because, again, the thing you're starting is novel. That is why you're doing it. There won't be a playbook to prepare from. You need to go out and invent it. If you feel unprepared to build a tool that helps physical therapists learn new treatment protocols for ACL, MCL, and PCL surgery, the only way to get more prepared is to do a slimmed down version of that thing. To run a 1-day workshop where you bring in an expert and get physical therapists to show up and gather some patients. Or something else that helps you see the feedback loop and close it fast. Counterintuitively, the way to start preparing in the startup world is to put yourself on the hook for something you feel entirely unprepared for and to do it. Then your to do list becomes the steps you need to take to make that thing you're on the hook for and unprepared for work. And we end up at our ambitious, unique to do list. Some of these approaches might sound resource or time heavy, things you might not have a lot of, which leads us very nicely into situation number 4, where you are resource scarce. Situation number 4, when you're low on resources. Way back in the early 2010s, when I was building Find Your Lobster, I ran into a pretty serious resource problem. Namely, that I was running out of money we'd raised and we weren't making any money to replace it. As our bank account dipped, I mapped out how many months we actually had left, trying to stretch the money as thin as possible to try and eke out more time. So I hired the least expensive developers I could find to fix an app that had needed some serious fixing before it was going to generate any revenue. I whittled down the team to just me. I started looking for consulting gigs that could maybe give us another month or two. And eventually, predictably, we fizzled out. That is how your normal brain deals with resource scarcity. It hoards, it stretches, it tries to survive. But most of the time in the startup world, that is a terrible use of resources. Because it's very unlikely that just staying on the exact course you've been on for an extra 4 months while tightening your belt is going to suddenly make your strategy successful. Fizzling is not a good strategy. When your resources get low, think about how you can use them in a way that dramatically amplifies your impact. Try to figure out ways to change your position. Often that means a big, calculated swing that leverages the resources quickly. And that swing will work or it won't. But it's more likely to work than just bleeding everything away for a few extra months. Fizzling never works. I spoke with Dana Trout, the founder of Health Aid Kombucha, forever ago when we used to do guests on the show. She told me about a story where she was down to like $20K and had a bunch of inventory. Instead of hoarding the $20K and cutting costs and trying to scrape by for as long as possible, she put up a bunch of ads for a $20,000 sales competition. She offered huge commissions for selling her kombucha to retailers and grocery stores, with $20K going to the person who sold the most in a month. An enormous amount of kombucha was sold. She happily paid a ton in commissions, and the person who sold the most got a $20K bonus, and it was an inflection point in the business. When resources are short, particularly at the beginning, hoarding those resources probably won't help. Figure out a to-do list monster and execute on it. Take a swing. Don't be done with your money, but go after something ambitious. The end. Lotto tickets. The metaphor of our friend Dustin's lottery tickets is a good one. It might seem like these strategies are risky, like you're setting yourself up for a low likelihood of return, but you're not. The riskiest thing you can do with your startup is to approach it using normal brain. You'll end up with a predictable, safe business that doesn't find or create any real value. All of this is obviously easier to say than to do. And of course, there are a lot of times when you're going to just sit back and crank out cold emails or make a website or whatever. It's not always the strategic thing. But knowing about entrepreneur brain and normal brain, realizing that your instincts are inadvertently trying to sabotage your business is really helpful. Maybe toss a post-it on your computer with normal brain and entrepreneur brain on it. Realize when you should be leveraging one versus the other. And now, I'm going to go play Sticky Feet. Ocean Feet, Hold On by Wilson Phillips. Release Me, also by Wilson Phillips. Seems like there are a bunch of Wilson Phillips songs that would be good names for this game. Interesting. Not really. The Beach Calls. Have a great week. This was the Idea to Startup podcast brought to you by Tacklebox. If you've got a full-time job and a startup idea, check us out. GetTacklebox.com.